Hello, and thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, James and I discuss opportunity. When do you know one's coming along? How do you respond to it? Are there any principles or questions that can help you figure out how to fit it into what is probably an already full creative practice and life? Hope you enjoy.
Hey, Pat.
Yes, James.
I'm sorry I was late to this segment, but my hand towel valet was out back smoking. So I was standing there with wet hands and no valet.
Wow.
I'm here now.
You're here now. Did you fire that person's ass?
They're on their way out the door. If they
Okay.
weren't so good at their job, they'd be done.
Well, not everyone can afford a valet to hold your hand towel on the, 5 or 6 times a day you go to the can. So good for you.
Well, 10 to 12.
Question mark. Oh. 12. I don't even want to know, so I'm not going to ask.
So, and it's interesting that I'm late to our conversation where we're going to talk about opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a new perspective, a new thing.
Well, I mean, it's always part of a creative person's life. In fact, of everybody's life, I would say there come along opportunities. And, I grew up in a family. My parents were immigrants to Canada, both of them. They met here, but they both came from a different country. And so I never saw them turn down an opportunity that was doable.
Really?
Yeah.
Not once.
Not once. I mean, I wasn't aware of their opportunities in the first 10 or 15 years of my life, probably, but after that, yeah, if they were offered, my dad, after he retired, he was consulting in his field. He's a
Mhm.
statistician and specializing in sawmill efficiency, and he was
Wow.
invited on a World Bank thing to Russia, and it was a 9-month contract, and
Wow.
he took it because he never turned down an opportunity that he could do.
Wow.
Anyway, all that to
Interesting.
say, I have a certain perspective on opportunity, but I think they're also very interesting because you don't always know when one is staggering towards you. You don't
Mm.
recognize them often sometimes.
I like staggering.
Or you're
Yeah,
staggering towards
they
it.
tend to be drunken fools.
Sometimes an opportunity is just a conversation, you know?
Yeah.
And then it circles back around. So anyway, I wanted to talk to you about opportunity. How do you recognize them when they come to you? Have there been any big ones you regret not taking? Why did you perhaps not
Yeah.
take them? Stuff like that.
And as we were, contemplating this conversation, to me it feels like it's opportunities that you said no to and
Mhm.
why, and trying to drill into that. When something came your, my, or anybody's way, what is the first instinct, right? Is it to
Mhm.
say, oh, here's an opportunity. Yes, I'm absolutely going to do it and I'm going to figure it out. Or is it to feel a little overwhelmed,
Mhm.
and say no?
I think everybody's different, but I was telling you this morning, that's kind of how we got onto this. I've been reading my way through Last Artist Standing,
Hmm.
edited by Sharon Loudon, our Gifted
Yep.
Achiever guest, a few
Great
weeks
book.
ago. Living and Sustaining a Creative Life Over 50. And a visual artist, Kay Miller, said, I was reading her essay, and I'll just read you this bit that made me really think. In,
Hmm.
in, in 1981, I accepted a tenure track position at the University of Iowa. This job was rewarding for many reasons, among them the Autonomous Art Museum. Robert Hobbs, the museum director, introduced me to an expanded world of art, and I began to show my work. Participating in a show at the New Museum in New York in 1984 was rapidly followed by invitations to exhibit with Jeffrey Hoffield, Mary Boone, and Bernice Steinbaum. Taken by surprise, I said, maybe, if I can get off work, or I don't feel ready. I had no idea of the magnitude of these offerings. I'd painted to heal myself and hadn't considered commerce. Recognizing neither names nor timelines, I
Mm.
hoped to knock on their doors when ready. I remain grateful for their recognition of my work. but she did not take those opportunities, and there were many trying times to come. That's me talking. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so this blew my mind because I don't recognize those names because I'm not an artist and I wasn't around,
Yeah.
I was around in that period, but I wasn't, I'm not the same age as this person. But I really find a tenure track professor at the U of Iowa who's showing her work will say to artists whose names she recognizes, I don't feel ready, or maybe if I can get off work.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a way of thinking that astonishes me personally, maybe because of my
Yeah.
background being so different from hers. She had many, many struggles. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this whole concept of generally speaking, saying no to an opportunity when we should always say yes, but there's times where you don't recognize this is actually an opportunity. But I think my comment will focus on I recognize it as an opportunity. Maybe I don't recognize it as a huge opportunity or, a small opportunity, but there was the line that intimated or inferred that she was wanted to knock on doors when she was ready,
Yeah.
right? Which means it's like a perfectionism, maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, a little, all these kinds of things, fear-based things, saying
Mm,
I'm not ready.
yeah.
The opportunity came to me and I am not ready.
Yeah.
And that I find absolutely fascinating, saying no to something because you want to know, I want to be the approacher of the opportunity.
I don't
Kind
know that it's
of-
that
And I'm
powerful.
not saying that in a negative or judgmental way, but it's that fear thing coming up, right?
Hmm.
If I'm
Yeah.
not ready, I'm not good enough, you know, kind of issue. And that, always fascinates me.
Hmm. I wonder, okay, so I think I want to circle back. You said
Hmm.
we should always say yes to opportunities. And I question that. Should we always say yes? Sometimes the thing about opportunities is it's 2020 hindsight. You go through your day and you know nothing. If is this an opportunity? Is that an opportunity? I mean, my approach is to try and think fairly big picture when either I'm being offered something or I have a conversation with somebody that could lead us to collaborate on something.
Hmm.
I try to think big picture, and big picture usually is the fact that, there's always tendrils going out from one creative person to another, always.
Hmm.
And if those tendrils are, if you pay attention to them, it turns into something. It's been almost invariably my experience. However,
Hmm.
uh, I think it relies on that hindsight aspect to know when something was an opportunity or was somebody just wasting your time.
Right.
Because I've had people approach me to do stuff where I would be doing all the work, and that's not an opportunity for me. That's more of a
Yeah.
like they're looking for a servant. And so,
Yeah.
I'm curious about should we always say yes?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you have to be good at evaluating things that
Mhm.
come your way so that you can figure out, is this an opportunity or is this just somebody trying to get me to do something for them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so, in the instances where the evaluation is somewhat obvious that, yes, this is an opportunity,
yeah.
where I get into that curiosity is, and there's plenty of times where I've had that, where somebody is, something has come staggering my way. And, the first impulse was to say no, but
Hmm.
then I took time and thought about it, and I was like, don't say no, say
Mm,
yes.
yeah,
Yes, you may not have the time, all this kind of stuff, but say yes and at least try,
yeah,
right? Do the work,
yeah.
right? Because things don't always come to you.
Hmm.
And when there's two instances in popular culture that always they're like chipmunks in my brain,
Yeah.
constantly running around. One of them is Joan Rivers talking. Actually, they're both related to comedians. One of them is Joan Rivers talking to another comedian who's saying, "Oh, I don't want to do that. It's too small for me."
Oh, I remember that. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And she says she gets pissed off
Mm.
and says, "No, do the work. Do the work.
Yeah.
Nothing is too small. Do the work."
Uh-huh.
And there's something about that that really just don't overthink things, do the work, right?
Hmm.
Take the jobs. That's one piece of it. But then I think the other piece of it is understanding that we allow our own, fears like, I've got so much going on already. Do I have the capacity? Is my work good enough? Am I ready? Is this the right time?
Hmm.
All of these considerations, and I have seen other creatives talk about, oh, it's not the right time, and oh, I don't feel like my work is ready. All these kinds of things. And I just feel like you need to evaluate, is this an opportunity, yes or no?
Yeah.
Is it something that if I had nothing else going on and came to me, do I feel like I could succeed at? Which
Yeah.
is kind of a difficult question.
Hmm.
Um, and then I never get to know when I think of it that way,
Mm. Yeah.
right? And
Because you
so,
don't take it, you turn it down.
yeah, I mean, I'll take,
Hmm.
I'll say yes. Definitely those times where it's like there's conflicts, like there's true conflicts. But that's where we need to be better at conversations and not so reliant on assumptions, perhaps.
Yeah. So if I get an opportunity and I am genuinely using every hour of the day, it's already committed. Instead of saying no, I'm too busy, I will say I'm very interested. Can we talk about the timeline?
Mm, right. And so that, to me, earlier in my career when I was first starting, I wouldn't have done that because I wouldn't have had the confidence to say to somebody, hey, I'm really busy right now, but can we talk about the timeline?
Yeah.
And that's, and now, I mean, I think even now, I might feel a little reticence to have that conversation.
I have nothing to lose, you know? That's, I guess, my position. If I genuinely can't do it and they have a specific timeline that needs me to be able to do it, I'm just not the right fit for that opportunity.
Mhm.
You know, if I can do it, but it would require rearranging a lot of stuff, then I look at the return on investment sometimes, but you can't always tell when an opportunity is an opportunity. So if it's a chance to read my work out loud, I'll do it. I'll show up. If it's in the city, if it's going to take me 3 days to get there and cost me $1,000, I'm not going to do it. It's unlikely unless there's a payoff that's so huge that I can justify it. So it's kind of dependent on a few things. I think because the thing about opportunities, we don't know until afterward that it's going to be what it is, what it turns into. It takes a certain amount of open-mindedness and willingness to subvert your own attitudes, you know, to say, well, what if I'm seeing this in a closed-minded way? What if it would take this, this, and this to make this work for me? You know, whatever that is. Or if it's an opportunity you're creating collaboratively with somebody else, you get to write the script. You know, it's not between you. You're not faced with just being a yes or no. You're faced with more of a how, who and
Mhm.
how. And so that's another way to look at opportunities is this I'm being offered something and I can take it or not take it? Or is this is be an interesting collaboration or an interesting thing to do? And I almost feel like I'm collaborating with myself sometimes, you know,
Mhm.
like I'm the me who runs my business and spends a lot of time at work, and then I'm the me who has creative ambitions and knows I can do it and has to negotiate with myself for that time, you know? And so
Wow.
it's like it's an opportunity for sure. You know,
Mhm.
everything I write is an opportunity to go somewhere. But the stuff I don't write I write a lot. I hardly ever publish anything, and so it's kind of weird that the things I have put out have been created genuine opportunities, every single one of them. So it's
Mhm.
I think it's a bit of a confidence thing, actually.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. And there's definitely an argument to be made that any opportunity is your preparedness bearing fruit, right?
Yeah,
So you put things out in the world that they've been noticed and an opportunity comes your way.
yeah,
And I'm wondering, for example, a publisher comes to you and says, you have this book, The Tenants.
yeah.
We think it's great, but we'd like to have you do some revisions, bulk up the word count, and we need it by March.
Hmm.
Given everything that you have going on, how are you going to evaluate that? Is that something you would automatically just say yes to?
No, I would evaluate it as in what's their goal? What's their objective?
Mhm,
It's already been published the way it is. How would they see that working to further their own goals? And
mhm,
then if they have a good reason, if they have an actual, what strikes me as a reasonable proposal, then I would absolutely consider it because it's already good the way it is, but I love it. I love
mhm,
the book. So, I'll be
mhm,
happily dive back in there if I have a good enough reason. Otherwise, I'll just keep working on the Frankenstein novel. So,
mhm,
yeah, it is case by case. If an opportunity comes along and I can't figure out why the person is suggesting that this happen, then I would talk to them about it.
mhm.
Yeah.
So again, it comes down to, conversation. And
Yeah.
part of that conversation, it sounds like, could include, well, if you're interested in the tenants, that's a finished project.
Yeah.
It's out in the world. I have something I'm working on now. Maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah. 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 So I think the same thing would probably apply to anyone in any creative field. You don't know where things are going to lead. My own set point is to give it serious consideration
Hmm.
and to not dismiss it out of hand. And I'm talking about my own creative stuff, not so much.
Hmm.
It works too for my editing business. I give new projects and things that would be a stretch. I give them serious consideration. I don't reject them out of hand. I figure out if I can do it, and then I do it.
Hmm. Yeah, and so I like this notion of it's just more of a self-negotiation to
Yeah,
kind of figure out, here's what I need,
yeah,
right? Well, so one is this really an opportunity or is this something else, right?
yeah,
So, evaluating it. And then this sort of self-negotiating of, how am I going to make this work? Is it really something I want?
yeah,
Uh, and then moving from there to a conversation
yeah,
with the person saying, okay, here's what here's, it's almost like coming back with like a counter offer of saying, yeah,
yeah,
this sounds really interesting, but here's my parameters of how this, you know, could work for me.
yeah. And the self-negotiation comes with the underlying mindset that I'm positively disposed towards opportunities. When I negotiate with myself, I'm thinking about how could this work? Not so much
Mhm,
will this work, but how could it work?
mhm,
And then all the factors that are true of anybody's life come in and I think them through. I like to think it's a creative situation. Opportunities are creative and we're
mhm.
creative, so we can be pretty creative about how we make them work. That's just my
Yeah.
take. What about you? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, I see it as, you know, shifting from how I was early career to how I am now, but also early career willingness to take risks
Yeah,
for an opportunity, right?
yeah,
So the one that comes to mind, well, as a journalist, there were lots of times where I had opportunities presented to me to do things that a lot of other journalists don't get to do, like
mhm,
interview people like George Bush or Al
yeah,
Gore, right?
yeah,
And there's a lot of, I didn't have a lot of confidence
yeah,
at that point, and I didn't have a lot of experience either. I was really new.
hmm,
Um, but I just knew that if I say no, or I try and hand it off to somebody else who I think does, that I'm missing out on an experience, one that is one of those neat kind of life experiences where
yeah,
I got to do this, but also one that marks you as a journalist who's
yeah,
to be taken seriously. And so I would have a lot of fears
hmm,
and wouldn't sleep for 2, 3 nights before because I was, nervous. I would do tons of homework, probably too much
yeah,
before these kinds of things, and they really were gut churners.
yeah, yeah,
Where now, because I've been through those experiences, it's less so. I don't have that so much.
yeah,
Um, but at the same time, there were probably, and I can't remember them, but I know they exist, opportunities that I probably just turned down because I either didn't realize the opportunity that it was, or the fear got the better of me.
Yeah.
You know, oh, I just can't do that,
Yeah.
um, kind of thing. Whereas now I'm a little more willing to sort of say, I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but I know I can make it work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's that piece of it. And
Yeah.
it's for both the professional, the ghostwriting and all that kind of stuff. The only time where, I really kind of grind my teeth and have to say no is sometimes there will be a client that comes to me who has either the client themselves or their project or both is just so appealing that I really, really, really want to do it. But then they say, it's got to be done by January. And
Hmm.
there's just no feasible way I can do it. And so
Yeah.
I have to, out of consideration to them, I have to
Hmm.
say,
Yeah.
um, even if, and I will ask, I'll say, well, can you push that back? And they're like, no, 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 this is really a hard gotta have. But, it's interesting that there's definite differences between us. And you are very intentional about so many things.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that you have this sort of intention of I'm going to negotiate with myself first
Yeah.
to figure out what do I need, right?
Yeah.
Do I want this and what do I need to
Yeah.
be able to, what are the resources that I need to be able to make this work?
Yeah.
And I wonder too, because often capacity, we're
Mm.
all constantly stretched for capacity because there's more things we want to do. How do you analyze that? How do you consider, okay, how am I going to make space for this?
Well, it's pretty practical. I look at my calendar. I look at when the next big project is due, the one after that, how many hours I have left on each project because I track my time. So I can generally make a pretty solid estimate. I consider what shape the opportunity is. Is it to go somewhere? Is it to start, physically collaborating with somebody on something? Is it to go somewhere regularly? Is it to teach? Is it to add a project to my list of
Mhm,
personal projects? So what is it? What's the shape of it? How would I do it in the best case scenario? As in, if I had all the time and resources in the world, how would I like to see this unfold? And then how long can I go without money? Because sometimes opportunities come with no money
mhm,
attached initially and sometimes forever.
yeah.
So how can I afford to do this? Or how can I afford to try it? Because I'm quite
Mhm,
happy to start an opportunity and then see how it goes. I
mhm,
don't sign anything in blood. So there's all these different factors, but I do find it fairly straightforward to check my
mhm,
capacity because I track so much of my own time. To
mhm,
me, the big one is time. Mental energy, I'm starting to understand that rest is huge for me. I don't
mhm,
get enough of it. So I'm extending turnaround times for projects and so on. So if I was, approached with an opportunity or met somebody and was talking about an opportunity to do something together, or to prepare something for them, for let's say it was a publisher and they said, "Oh, can you write a book about this?" I would know that turnaround times have created overwork in my past, and so
mhm.
I would be aware to stretch that. Don't say the first date I think you can get it done by.
Yeah,
You know, say a date 2 months later, and then see what they say. So just a bit of a slow kind of process of
yeah.
feeling out the territory because the opportunities are often quite amorphous. They're a bit nebulous, even in the
Mhm,
person's mind that you're talking with, or the organization's, mind, if you will. They don't need it to be a certain way initially. So the conversations are huge, and then you can go from there.
yeah. And it's interesting when you're sort of saying, talking about the time frame.
Hmm.
And one of the differences I think I also noticed about early and where I'm at now is I would get like this hunger, right? Because I want to do it. And
Yeah.
so it was more like I was in a competitive frame of mind
Mm.
where it's like I'm gonna pitch either a rate or a time frame or whatever the element is that
Hmm.
I feel like is gonna get them to say yes,
Right.
as opposed to what I need to be able to realistically do to get me to yes.
Yeah.
That makes sense,
No,
right?
I
So
totally. It's just because we just talked about negotiating with yourself. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what that is.
and it's an unwillingness in me at that point to negotiate with the other person.
Hmm.
So I'm negotiating with myself. I can go without sleep for 5 days if da 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 da, as opposed to being willing, and having that confidence,
Yeah,
right? To say to that other person, okay, you've set 2 months as your timeline. I can do it in 6.
yeah,
And having the faith that if they want you to do it, there will be discussion as
yeah.
opposed to just, no, thank you, goodbye.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that applies to whether you're ghostwriting or you're doing your own creative work and you have internal deadlines and so on. So that's not so much opportunities, except that they kind of are. You know, if you perceive your own creative work as opportunities, then you're more favorably disposed toward them, and you're more.
Mm,
I think you can give yourself a bit more
yeah.
momentum. These are opportunities. This book I'm writing, I wrote this nonfiction book on fiction editing, and
Hmm.
I did it because I found out I had to get divorced, and I realized that I needed to up my game in terms of credibility, and having a book is a great way to do that. I'm a writer, so it was kind of like the obvious thing to do, and then it
Yeah.
led to other things. So that one was an opportunity that I saw myself, that I just went, yeah, that's an opportunity. I have to make every
Hmm.
aspect of it happen. It's not anybody else doing it for me. But it has paid off in ways I couldn't even have seen at the
Hmm.
time. So yeah, I think it's more than just collaborations or contracts or stuff like that, or shows, or roles, say if you're an actor, or gigs if you're a comedian. It's more than that. It's seeing everything you do as the potential to be an opportunity.
Wow. So the work, there's two sides to this. There's the opportunities that come your way, and then there's the opportunities that you create.
Yeah,
And the ones that you create have just the same sort of self-negotiation or issues of, do I have the time to do this? I want to do it. It is an opportunity, but do I have time? Do I have the capabilities to make this work?
yeah,
Um, how am I going to market it? All those kinds of things
yeah.
get figured in. How long am I going to give myself to do it?
Yeah, and I actually think some of it can be sort of a just-in-time production idea. Sometimes just spending time with the opportunity, sort of project,
Mhm.
whatever it is, tells you what the next step is. There's over planning. If you're living always in future land, then you can get stuck. So using the time available to do the work of the opportunity rather than using it as planning for the opportunity.
And then, another question I had is when there's like a moral, ethical type of conflict. And I don't mean somebody's coming to you and saying, "Hey, I want you to promote smoking," right?
Yeah.
It's more like, you recognize this is a great opportunity. This is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. It's going to get me where I want to go faster
Yeah.
if I do this, but I'm going to have to tell two clients that I'm working with right now and have just started with that I can't do their projects.
Oh, yeah. I don't consider any opportunity worth breaking a contract that I already have in place because
Mhm.
I use contracts. So if I have a contract, I'm going to deliver the terms of the contract
Mhm.
100%. And if the opportunity can't wait, then so be it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel the same way. It's hard to, wearing a very realistic, pragmatic hat, come up with an opportunity that actually would happen,
Yeah.
where I'd be like, oh boy, I need to really think about this versus, this commitment that I've made to somebody else for 6 months kind of thing.
Yeah. I think of Johnny Depp actually when you raise the question, because he was working in this Canadian television program called 21 Jump Street.
Hmm.
I think it was back in the 80s. And
Hmm.
he broke out. He was huge, absolutely huge,
Yeah.
teen pop idol. He wasn't a teen, he was in his early 20s, I think. And he was offered a couple of film roles while he was still under contract for that show, and he turned them down. He said, "I'm under contract.
Really?
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to break my contract with the show." So he worked out his contract. I think there was some flexibility maybe in one of them, but he was willing to walk away from
Hmm.
big money as a young actor, because it wasn't out of fear, it was out of integrity.
That's really it, you know. So one of the stories that I've heard, the flip side of that coin, is Michael J. Fox. He's in his hit TV series, I think it was Family Ties or something.
Yeah,
And Back to the Future had hired another actor to play Marty McFly,
yeah.
and he just wasn't working because he was playing serious, da da da. And so they get rid of him, and they want to have Michael J. Fox, and he says yes,
Hmm.
right? And then he has to figure out a way in negotiating with the movie production and the TV show production, so where he is literally shooting the TV show, changing clothes, getting on a plane, flying, doing the movie, changing clothes, getting on a plane, and doing this insane lifestyle. And he
Uh,
was able to do it, and both these things worked out. I mean, the movie was, a big career opportunity for him.
mm.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a right or a wrong way
No, it's your
about
values.
this. Yeah.
Johnny Depp valued his word, and so did Michael J. Fox. He did both.
Hmm.
He didn't ditch the TV show. Both of them worked out. They're both huge,
Yeah.
stars
Yeah.
of our generation. And so I think, yeah, it's got to be based in your own values and sort of ways of thinking and how you approach yourself,
Hmm.
self-respect, respect for other people, like opportunities. The one where I read this bit of an essay, Kay Miller's in Last Artist Standing, that was what you mentioned before. It was a no out of fear, or in a way, ignorance. I'm not calling the artist an ignorant person. I'm
Yeah.
saying she didn't
Yeah.
know that these were big names. She didn't know that there was a timeline that would never come around again. She just did not know that much about the industry. And, I had a similar, very much different experience, but I got an editorial letter once after I'd written a manuscript and submitted it to a Canadian publisher, and I didn't know it was an editorial letter, so I never revised the manuscript. I thought she didn't like my
Mm.
book. It was three bulleted pages of things to change. And I just went,
Yeah.
oh, well, I'm leaving for my trip around the world in 2 weeks. And then a year later, I came back and started a new book. I had no idea of the industry, and I didn't know that for an
Uh,
editor to read the entire an acquisitions editor to read the entire manuscript and write you a 3-page letter meant that they were interested. I did not know that. I assumed,
wow.
yeah, what a dummy, right? But I was ignorant. So, you know, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't fault myself or the editor. I just did not know there was an industry behind my luck, with writing.
Yeah. No, that's it. I'm sure there's things where I've said, blissfully said no
Hmm.
to not recognizing what I was saying no to.
Yeah,
And I can't remember the specific times, but I definitely can remember the sensation of saying no to something or asking, a question that d displays my ignorance,
yeah,
the situation and what this person was doing for me.
yeah,
And that still happens. I had somebody writing a reference during our grand grant experiment,
yeah.
and asking people to write a reference to me is a horror. It's really
Uh-huh, yeah,
hard to do. Um, and then I was so relieved that they said yes, that when they asked a follow-up question, I just sort of blithely sort of said sure,
uh,
without providing more. And they're like, hey, you've just asked me to do this big thing. Now you've got to step up. And I had no
yeah,
idea that
yeah,
that's what I had been rude. It had,
uh-huh,
kind of crushing.
yeah,
I definitely know that sensation of not being fully aware
yeah,
of of what's going on, and and having that person write that letter of recommendation was a big opportunity, and a really nice thing for them to do as well.
hmm,
So yeah, I guess, we're getting to, maybe there's these questions. I would say, one, if fear is your reason for saying no, then that shouldn't be a good enough reason, right?
yeah. I don't like to use the word
Mhm.
shouldn't. I think that if fear is your reason for saying no, that's a good chance to explore what you're afraid of.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've got to explore what you're afraid of, but I think that's a signal
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
you're not making a a sound choice in that moment. It may turn out as you analyze it that, I need to say no,
Yeah.
and then the other is, FOMO, fear of missing out,
Hmm.
right? Where you need to take a pause and you
Hmm.
need to consider and think, am I worried about missing out on this opportunity that I'm not actually evaluating? Is this the right opportunity for me? Is it something I can do, want to do? Is it
Yeah.
actually an opportunity
Yeah.
too?
Yeah. And how,
Another,
if yes, how?
yeah. So I wonder if there's a formula, so to speak, like a
Yeah.
set of questions.
Some kind of principles. I was joking around with myself when we were talking, and I called this segment Opportunity Knocks You Up because um, opportunities can make you pregnant for 9 months or longer. They're like they can become a big part of your experience for a
Yeah.
while, and then they change your ongoing or your future experience in ways you can't predict. So I think principles would be to be able to, if you don't know the goal of of the person offering the opportunity, or if you can't see it yourself, if an opportunity you're creating, then establish the goals. It might be one
Mhm.
principle. Another one might be to evaluate your capacity in with a mind of how, and
Mhm.
not if, more like, am I going to do this? No, probably, how am I going to do this? Just be positively disposed towards opportunities if you
Mhm.
can. Educate yourself on the opportunity, which I guess goes back to number one. So, and then negotiate with yourself about how it can work for you. Put yourself in the middle of it, because you are in the middle of it. The pregnant woman is not on the sidelines, you know,
Mhm.
she's in the middle of it. And so you're the one who needs to be looked after by yourself.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think too another piece of this is trust that if you don't have answers to some of those things, or you don't have the very specific answers to some of those things, that you can figure it out
Yeah. Yeah.
to a
Trust
certain
yourself.
extent as you go along.
Yeah.
And that's the mid that I'll tell you, that's a mid-level career tool in your pocket.
Yeah. Trust
That
yourself. Confidence. Yeah.
yeah,
And
because
then communicate. You've got to be able to communicate with whatever the opportunity is, whether it's yours or somebody offering you something, because everything is plastic, right? There's neuroplasticity, there's opportunity plasticity, I think, where you can shape it. It's not this monolithic thing that you have to fit yourself into. It's
right, right.
it's something you can help shape.
And I think, the questions that you should ask yourself, right? And we're talking about, this moment of considering, what do I need to succeed?
Yeah.
Right. And so if it's more time capacity, you can sort of have, I'll trust a little bit, but you can think about that. And then that informs the conversation that you need to have with the other side of this.
Yeah. Exactly.
And understanding, what do they feel like they need to succeed? How does this best fit together? Which is
Yeah.
just, smart collaboration anyway.
Yeah. And you can leave the door open. So let's say, instead of saying, "Oh, no, I'm too busy," you say, "I'm very interested. Could we talk about the timeline or something like that? Or could we talk about the money? Can we talk about this?" And they say, "I'm sorry, this is what it is. It's a yes or a
Mhm.
no." Then you can come back not with so much with a no, but more of "I'd love to work with you on some future project. This one doesn't seem like it's going to work out, but let's keep the door open." And then
Mhm.
they are communicating with you, and you're communicating with them.
Mhm.
And they might think of you at the least, obvious time, and it could bear fruit way down the road.
Mm, yeah. And then, I think another sort of last piece of this conversation that has to be mentioned is you get into this and it's not working for
Mm,
any reason.
yeah,
And your ability to acknowledge that and then have conversations that are either that probably all of them or most of them, unless you're very convinced that I can't do this any longer, conversations where it's about, okay, how do it's not working, here's why, how do we fix it?
yeah,
but then recognizing, I've gotten myself into this. I thought it was gonna work. It's for whatever reason, it's not working. And having that ability to say, and again, it bumps into that, when you've contracted and given your word, that can be a pretty dicey self-conversation, right?
I think so. I think it really is. You got to going inside yourself and thinking about what is it that tells me this isn't working and how big is that thing? And then there's no law against changing your mind. If I get into an agreement with somebody, I'm never going to have it so that I'll be feeling stymied and sort of resentful or anything. I'm not going to create an agreement like that. So if it's not working, it means either there was no agreement or the agreement has been broken on the other
Mhm.
end, which gives you absolutely the right to say, this is not how we talked about doing this. And so, can we talk about getting back to our initial discussions? Can we talk about how to go forward, or would you like to pull the plug?
Mhm.
So there's just
Yeah.
ways of talking about stuff. It's kind of a an assumption that the other person is well-intentioned, and people, to my experience around creative stuff, they usually are, you know?
Yeah. No, they usually are, but people can be well-intentioned, but pushing beyond what's reasonable and
Oh,
that kind of
sure. I've walked away. I mean, I've walked away from things I thought were opportunities because it was so hard to deal with the person, and I have no problem walking away. And I've had people say, "Oh my God, this really shook me up. I'm
thing.
surprised." And I'm like, "Well, there's no reason for you to be surprised. I was clear all the way through. These are what I need, and if I'm not getting it, I'm fine to walk away. And if
Yeah.
if no money's changed hands, I don't charge them, and if money has changed hands, I'll give it back. It's not a work thing for me. It was just it's only happened once,
Mhm.
where maybe twice in 15 years in the sort of adjacent publishing industry area, writing, that I walked away from a project that the other person thought was a go. And in
Mhm.
both cases, no money had changed hands. It was me saying, I'm not going to work with you.
Mhm. Yeah, and for me now, I've gotten to where, and again, this is another as at mid-level versus beginning, is a big difference, is I've gotten a lot better at being aware when it's time to sort of start to ask questions and
Yeah,
and when it absolutely is clear, and it, this happens very, 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 very rarely, but say this isn't working, I don't think it's working for you.
yeah.
Um, let's, go different ways. And then I'll say, here's where I think you might find what you're looking for
Yeah, I do
too.
the same. Yeah. I offer
Um,
alternatives.
yeah, which I, never would have done when I first started. And I wonder, you had this incredible experience in the prior work experience in
Oh,
the
the conference industry, conference and
conference.
trade show. Yeah.
All right. The word functions kept going in,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah. Stuff. Yeah.
conference industry, and I think that served you very, very well
Yes.
as being an organizer, an orchestrator, and able to say, no, that's not going to work, but we can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. It helped. I learned how to think on my feet, and also, these were large international events with heads of state at some of them, very high security, lots of different cogs, and I usually worked at the higher level in the department of the organizer, starting in as an assistant in that realm. But so I
Mhm.
wasn't doing food and beverage. I was mm, higher, like the whole thing. You see the whole project, and it gave me confidence because I traveled a lot and I was in a lot of different environments and working with a lot of different people from different environments and different skill sets. And it also gave me an understanding that if people don't know what's possible, they will ask for the impossible. And so you have to be pretty clear. This
Mhm.
hotel has 400 rooms. We can't turn it into offices for 9,000 people. It's not going to work. So,
Mhm.
um, here are 5 other hotels. They're linked, they're pedestrian walkway or whatever. Like just being able to think fairly quickly about how to achieve their goal, given the restrictions of the built environment and so on.
Yeah, and I think what a great when I started this, I didn't have any experience similar to that, and so it was a very steep I had other experiences that were, translated very, very well and were incredibly helpful. But that was one that I absolutely didn't have, and it was a very steep learning curve for
Yeah.
that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, one that I still deal with, really.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I love the talk. Opportunities to me are just such a fascinating aspect of being a human being.
yeah,
How people respond to opportunities. One of my very good friends, she always responds with a no,
yeah,
and only recently has started going, you know what? I'm going to try that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's that, kind of cliched, go a month without saying no to anything, right? Say
Yeah.
yes to everything kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
there's probably some value to that, but
It's unrealistic, I would say, but there's a TED Talk and maybe a book called My Year of Saying Yes. I think it might
uh
be Fonda Rhimes or one of the showrunners who's very big, and, I'm not sure about the authorship, but just I think the concept is pretty good. I should probably read that book because now I'm curious about what shit hit the fan, from saying yes to everything. I'd be very curious on how it played out.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
What?
So I think to round out, we've mentioned there's sort of a series of questions that you can ask yourself to help you sort of evaluate and figure out, how do I do this and how do I approach the conversations that have to happen?
Mhm.
Um, Rarely is an opportunity where you just say yes and off you go.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
everybody has to be clear on the goals and those kinds of things. Yeah, and if your initial response is to say no out of a fear, you
Yeah.
need to dig into that.
Yeah.
I would go as far as to say that maybe, it's something that you should probably say yes to.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, either way, you need to dig into that to understand it. And
Yeah.
then a little bit of trust in yourself that you can figure things out as you go along.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay then. I'm gonna give you the opportunity to say goodbye.
Goodbye. Farewell, Peter Zane.
Thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Hope you have a great creative week.